Thank you again for coming, and we have got some decision makers in this room tonight, which is interesting, isn't it? People in this room will have listened. They have their own hustings later this week, but it's interesting to see what you've all said. Thank you for coming. Let's hear your final pitch, as they say. Have a minute. Thank you.
Thanks again for coming, everybody. From my discussions with the MHKs and MLCs and in this really interesting and unique process, I have distilled three elements that I understand they're expecting for the role. One is to apply rigorous review of legislation. Two is to engage in scrutiny. And three, to provide constructive feedback on potential or unintended consequences. In my experience, this is all things that I've done. I'm very comfortable with all these elements because I've practiced them in law. But mainly, I understand how law touches people and how important it is, especially to everybody from a person newly coming to a country to a big corporation. Law is so fundamental to the way we live, and we abide by it unconsciously. And so from my point of view, I think we really want to work on getting the best version of legislation possible when we take on this role.
Thank you, Archie. Paul?
Thank you. One of the items in the job description for the Legislative Council is that they are to provide a distinct and influential voice in political life on the island based on an understanding and experience of island life. I would say in excess of 60 years that I've been a resident in the Isle of Man, I've developed very considerable understanding and experience of island life. I can remember the periods I mentioned before when the population has dropped and when the population has risen. I can remember some of the economic difficulties we've been in. I can remember the Director of Education going around the schools telling them that there'd be no spending on education because we were down to the last 3 weeks of government expenditure in the reserves. That was the mid-1980s. So I've got a background, I've been through all of that, I've lived through all of that. And I bring a skill set together that would be distinctive because I'm not coming from the finance sector or business. And I've got professional skills of scrutiny, great attention to detail, and very comfortable with data.
Thank you. Thank you, Anna.
Thank you. Yes, thanks again for your time this evening and for giving us the opportunity to answer your questions. I certainly see it as a role that I can evolve in if selected. As I say, I'm not looking back retrospectively trying to impart knowledge that I've gained throughout my working career or other kind of life experience. I think with the experience I've got, I represent a different view to what's currently in council, and that I think can't be underestimated. As I say, I'm a graduate professional, and I'm going through massive problems trying to get a house. I experience problems with childcare. I see all those kind of frontline problems from a slightly different perspective, and I feel that the contribution I can add to the discussions around that can only improve the island for us all going forward. So it was just a final thank you for your time as well.
Thank you, Dan.
And thank you for some good questions and for taking the time to come and listen to us. Genuinely, I do believe that our upper house or the LegCo should be doing the scrutiny and taking the time and energy and diligence to make sure that if anything's been missed or anything can be misunderstood, that we actually feed that back into the system and make the changes and the amendments that are needed. From my perspective, I think that in my background, I'm an engineer by background, but also regulations in the Air Force, the current role I play as well, it's quite important not to get things wrong. Now, will I get everything right? Absolutely not. But will I be working to make sure we get very good law on the Isle of Man for everybody, that everyone can follow and understand to right? Thank you.
And Bill?
Thank you for all the good questions, and I can bring my previous experience both intermode and outside in the commercial world to this role. I can fully engage from day one. I should not underestimate the number of important decisions that will now be made, probably this TIMOD, January and February TIMOD, So I'm really hoping that I can help over the next 15 months provide best practice, diligence, rigour, scrutiny to achieve better outcomes, because that's what we're all here to do. That's effectively what delivers good value for the max taxpayer. Thank you.
Thank you. Should we go?
Yes, thank you all again for coming tonight. I've never classed myself as political, but I care about what goes on around me, and therefore, Bill, you're right. We are all political sitting on this panel. For me, I like to do the right thing. I like to fix things that are broken, and I like to work. That's what makes me sleep soundly at night, and I have the time, energy, and experience to excel in the role. I promise you, I will earn my keep.
Craig.
Well, I understand that one of the aims of the Positive Action Group is to increase the interaction between the general public and government. And I would say you've succeeded tonight with 7 people here who are putting themselves forward for this. And I'm greatly encouraged by the strength in depth that I've heard with the fellow candidates here. So I'm confident that the big shoes that Bill mentioned earlier will be filled. From a personal perspective, I'm somebody that can work collaboratively. I'm capable of interpreting and implementing legislation, and I'm about focusing on the people. When I look back at my career, the thing of which I'm most proud is that I feel that every role that I've fulfilled, I've left in a better state than when I started it. And so what I'm looking at here is precisely that. In 15 months' time, or in 2 terms' time, I'd like to look back and feel that it's in a better shape than today.
Well, that's it, and I hope that's been of interest. And can you show your support for all our panelists, please?